Welcome, everyone, to the Over Under Movies podcast, the show where we take a prominent figure or franchise and ask the simple question, is it overrated or is it underrated? I am joined, as always, by my good friend. He is the Toulouse to my Christian.
Wow, cool.
It's Mr. Dylan DeAngelis. Dylan, how are you?
What's happening, Jason? Doing good. Ready to do some pods today.
That's right. It's been a little while, like at least 2 or 3 weeks.
It's been a minute since we recorded, yeah.
Yeah, we've started doing these, we've been doing these batch recordings, which means we knock them all out once a month.
Yeah.
But that means we don't get to do it as often, which is a little bit of a bummer. And we're joined by a returning guest, an expert on the topic of today.
Hi, once again, Rhianna Malas. I'm still a writer, I guess. So, yeah, I am the sparkling diamond or whatever. I'm the creepy duke. Yes, so if you didn't know by our really subtle context clues, today we are talking about the 2001 film Moulin Rouge.
Yeah, so this is going to be a fun one. Rhianna, you pitched this one to me. You said you wanted to be back on the pod, and I was like, let's do it, let's go. What do you want to talk about? And you pitched like Baz Luhrmann in general, and then kind of whittled it down to Moulin Rouge, which I think a lot of people consider to be his like magnum opus.
Well, I think if we're talking about, because Baz Luhrmann is such a good argumentative point for the show, so this film is very like Baz Luhrmann at critical mass. And when trying to pitch a film, we did a horror film, which is like one part of my film knowledge and one part of my love, and that was Australian. So I wanted to do a musical. So I definitely chose Moulin Rouge just because it is a very important part of Australian history as well. I saw the musical when it came to Australia a couple of years ago, and yeah, I feel like the perception of this film definitely has a history, let's say. So I felt like it was a good one to talk about in that sense as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll jump right into it. So Rhi, I think since the last time you were here, we came up with like a new format for the show. So now we do these different segments to develop an objective score for the film. And then based off that score, then we decide whether it's overrated or underrated. So each of these segments, we can award up to 1 star. So there's 5 segments, and that gets us our critical or our objective rating out of 5 potential stars. The first segment is cultural impact. So we're going to talk about whether or not this movie has a cultural impact. And why don't you start us off? Because it sounds like you think it does have a significant, presence in the culture.
Absolutely, yes. So it has a cultural impact in several categories. So a bit of history about film Moulin Rouge and about Baz Luhrmann. This is the last film colloquially referred to now as his Red Curtain trilogy. So the first one was strictly ballroom, and that is a really important film in the glitter cycle, which is sort of this time post the Australian New Wave, where essentially there are a lot of queer films, there are a lot of, really feminine films. Like this is the same sort of era that brought out Muriel's Wedding and The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. So that's sort of, before then, Baz Luhrmann was a theatre guy. He directed a production of La Boheme. He produced Midsummer Night's Dream. So he was a theatre maker first. So then essentially he did strictly ballroom. Then he did Romeo plus Juliet. Mm-hmm. And then they were like, fine, you get to do your thing. And he's like, awesome. So yeah, that's how essentially Moulin Rouge is born. And of course, yeah, this is the film that is generally believed to have brought back the movie musical in the 2000s. So I guess films like Chicago and Hairspray and Sweeney Todd sort of owe their life to Moulin Rouge. Mm-hmm. So of course, incredibly important in that sense because it sort of just restylized the whole thing, and it sort of, I don't think everyone was trying to reheat their nachos or anything like that, but it was this Cambrian explosion of musical theatre adaptations and new musicals for at least a limited time.
Yeah, and this one is also, compared to those other ones you just listed, this was like an original movie musical, whereas like Sweeney Todd and Chicago are based off of existing Broadway shows. So if it wasn't for this, there would probably be no La La Land. That's an original one. There's a little later on, we'll talk about some other original movie musicals, but this was definitely like the big one of the modern era. In addition to that, just its impact on movie musicals, it inspired a Broadway show. So most of the time with these musical movies, there's a Broadway show first and it does well, and then you take a small gamble and hope that a movie version will do well. Sometimes it does, like Les Mis, and sometimes it doesn't, like Cats. But this one went the other direction. It was a movie first, and then a Broadway show came out in 2018. And that Broadway show is really successful. Yeah, it won a Tony Award.
2020, so your mileage may vary on that. But of course, yeah, it's toured the world. Baz Luhrmann promised very specifically it would come to Australia. It's come to Australia. I saw it live. It was great. There is a lot about how it adapted into a Broadway show that we could get into as well. How they didn't get the rights to some songs. They updated the soundtrack and they sort of revitalized the plot. So, I mean, of course, once again, your mileage may vary on whether or not you think the Broadway show is actually better than the movie. I think they both have their strengths and their values, though.
Yeah, I've heard mixed things. My cousin really goes to bat for the Broadway show over this one. And it's interesting now because a lot of people who are seeing this for the first time are coming off of it from having seen the Broadway show first. So it would be interesting to get that perspective as well. But I don't have that perspective because I saw this movie a while ago. And I've also never seen the Broadway show. Looks good, though. Looks like a lot of fun.
But talking about objectively the cultural impact that this movie specifically has, and it's tricky to evaluate a little bit because, and we'll get into this throughout the pod here, I'm sure, but it's very much like a time capsule a little bit of the early 2000s. And it was like one of the big things that we noticed on our watch when we saw it a couple days ago is like how like a lot of the music isn't even like 90s specific music. It's music of like, I'm guessing it's from like Baz Luhrmann's childhood or something like that. And so because of that, yeah, the movie like in the 2020s, I don't know necessarily has, maybe for, musical theater enthusiasts, this is a movie that is propped up a lot, but I think like movie going writ large, I don't know if I'm seeing like a ton of examples of the cultural impact of Moulin Rouge specifically. And, maybe Jason, you could say that this is this is like Gladiator or something like that, where it's a movie that did really well in the early 2000s in a genre that was much popular decades prior.
Yeah. Oh,
and
definitely.
then we see some reverberations like, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later in little spurts. At least like, if we're talking it out, I think this might be like a solid like half a star argument here. I don't know if this is a movie.
I think it goes for the full star. As well, just as well of like yes, there was Romeo plus Juliet, but this was the moment where Baz Luhrmann actually like made it, and he's sort of, despite how small comparatively his cinematography is in comparison to other auteur directors. Yeah, I mean, like one, he is an Australian director to have actually like made it, along with like people like Peter Weir and James Wan and etc. So I think it could go for the full star.
Yeah, in addition to just being an inspiration to the modern musical film, this movie also, in terms of what it did culturally, that song Lady Marmalade was like a big radio hit. The version that we're familiar with, the Christina Aguilera, Lil' Kim version, like that comes directly from this movie. It's a cover of like a song from the 70s, but it's definitely supplanted that and is the banger that we know today. So that's another point in its favor in terms of cultural impact. And then it also inspired the music video for Mr. Brightside by The Killers. Pretty huge influence there.
Well, huge cultural impact on white people.
White people have not been the same since. Yeah. That Lady Marmalade song also, like, I was reading about it on Wikipedia. Apparently it's like a gay anthem. Apparently it's considered to be one of the greatest, like, one-time supergroup songs, where it's got all those, like, iconic solo performers teaming up. I'll go with Rhi and give it the full star on this one. Like, Moulin Rouge is, It's a pretty big, pretty famous movie. At least within my circles, every time we do one of these podcasts, I take a look at Letterboxd from my Letterboxd account, and I see not only like the general audience reviews of it, but I see how many of my friends directly have watched this movie, and a lot of my friends have seen this movie.
Wow.
So
Unsurprisingly.
within my bubble,
a lot of your friends are one of them queers, so
I have gay friends and musical theater friends, and even those two things are a pretty tight Venn diagram. So we'll give it the full star, and we'll move on to our second segment, whether or not this will earn a full star. And this second segment is craft and performances. So we're going to talk about how this movie looks and feels, and then if the acting was good. Dylan, what did you think?
The movie's very interesting because it was made in 2001. I'm not sure when it was shot exactly, but the movie looks like a 90s to 2000s music video almost, in the way that like the cinematography is trying to blend early CGI with a lot of like large, impressive practical sets. There's also like a decent amount of green screen work going in with this movie that I'm guessing like it's out of necessity because he's doing these like panning shots. Obviously, you can see the theatrical influence to the way this movie is shot, where the entire film takes place in essentially one location that's got like several, smaller locations that they're constantly having scenes at. So even though this is an original story, you could see the theater roots in the way that he was writing the script. I give a special shout out to the giant elephant, that there's several scenes inside the elephant, which is great. That's probably the best prop of the movie, is just that entire set. And so, yeah, this movie got a decent amount of Oscars nominations, and we'll talk about that when we get later into the critic segment, I'm sure. A lot of it was the behind the camera stuff that, they were really getting a lot of praise for. So, yeah, on the technical side of things, I think, it's very well put together. And then, that's without even mentioning the cast. We can get into the cast here a little bit as well. But pretty stacked cast for the early 2000s. Very interesting group of actors.
From a production standpoint, and this is something I spoke to you about while I was watching the movie, every single production design element in this film, from the sets to the costumes, is absolutely fantastic. Like, I cannot find a single flaw in any of the costumes or any of the sets, and a lot of which, as we said, were very like practical. Of course, Baz Luhrmann had directed a production of La Boheme, which of course had a lot of influence on this film. So you could definitely see that, not just in like the story with its operatic elements. Yeah, like a shout out to Satine's red dress in the Elephant Love Melody. Shout out to all the costumes and the weird Bollywood production that they have at the end. A shout out to all the Moulin Rouge costumes. Like every single element is so incredible, and the scope of the film, the amount of extras they had to hire for these like giant music scenes, and the choreography is so, like, the camera work, as with every Baz Luhrmann production, is very divisive, and we can absolutely get into that. There was a lot to look at. There is so much to look at in this film, and all of it is so incredible. So I think even just on production design alone, I think you can get at least 3/4 of a star. I'm going to end up liking every element of this film.
Yeah, it's going to get every star. That's okay. If that's where we end up, that's where we end up. I think describing this film as a lot to look at is probably the most accurate thing you can say about it. Truly, every frame of that film is filled with stuff, and most of the time with music. So for me, there was some moments where I was like, this is awesome, and a lot of other moments where I was like, this is too much. He's doing too much.
There's a notable part, maybe, 25 minutes into the movie or something like that? Because I had never seen this movie before a couple days ago. And I turned to Jason, I went, okay, so what's happening? What's the plot of this movie? And it was like right after the first dance sequence. Yeah, it's the first time, once we got to the elephant, I was like, they're trying to make like a theater production, right? Is that the plot here? It's just because it's so fast. The editing is so frenetic. It's crazy. You can't follow what's happening. They were breaking the 180 rule like fucking crazy, which I pointed out. Like that camera is just going wherever he wants to put it. This movie got a nomination for Best Film Editing. Best film editing, by the way, like in the whole history of the Oscars, is the most like clown ass category you can imagine. It sucks every year. And the movie that wins like best film editing, I'm assuming they just like pick it out of a hat, because I don't think this movie has very good editing at all. I mean, this movie also, it got nominated for best cinematography, which is fair. It lost to Lord of the Rings, which is also fair. This movie is going up against Fellowship at the Oscars, which is tough look.
Brutal.
Tough look releasing a movie in the early 2000s. But it won for, best art direction and best costume design, which is like clearly the most interesting part of this movie is like how visually striking it is. And even though, like, I'm not a music theater guy, I don't like musicals in general, but the movie is definitely, like, cool to look at, and you can see a lot of the effort that's on screen. But yeah, I'm with you, Jason. It's a little bit much at times.
It's very divisive, the editing and the cinematography. It's so indicative of Baz Luhrmann's style, because you see that frenetic style of editing in, like, Romeo plus Juliet as well. And you see similar cinematography in that film and even like Gatsby. I didn't see Elvis or The Get Down, but it's definitely like, at the very least, it's a style that he likes and then he owns it. So he's clearly trying to do something of his own, whether I like it or not. The more I watch Baz Luhrmann films, the more I'm like, oh, I have a deep appreciation what this guy is doing, and I don't know if I like it.
The editing and the cinematography is the main thing that certain internet critics in the like late 2000s, early 2010s would absolutely clown on and like zero in on, because it's one of the only parts of the movie that might not work absolutely perfectly. So they're like, wow, this cinematography is ass. And like, listen, in Baz Luhrmann's defense, that is like, the cinematography is probably how some Mega Virgin 5000 would feel walking into the Moulin Rouge the first time. But it is weird. Like, once you settle in, it's fine. But it gets like, at first it is really weird and jarring. And even I, who like vehemently defend this film, is like, okay. Can we slow down for a sec? Okay. And eventually it does.
The movie has like pacing issues for sure. Even in a musical setting, it's important to have like your fast scenes and your slow scenes and your expository scenes, and you have that push and pull with the way that your script is flowing. And this movie, like, it front loads a lot of the energy. And then it's stuck having to like do the actual like dramatic elements once you're like into like the second and third act of the movie. And I honestly felt like if they were to just like space things out a little bit, at least like explain, like at the beginning of the movie, I thought that like Ewan McGregor's character was like a time traveler or something like that. I thought it was going to be a movie like that Beatles movie where the one guy is the only guy that remembers the Beatles. I thought Ewan McGregor was like going to be like a guy from like the 1980s that knew 1980s songs in 1900s Paris, because like it's not explained. It like they're just singing these songs, and like the movie's just like, you better buy into this because this is going to be the movie.
Yeah, it's called a jukebox musical, and that's like a thing that exists. But if you're unfamiliar with that as a concept, then yeah, it's a little jarring to hear those modern songs in an old-timey setting. I'm looking at the filmography of the cinematographer now. He's done a ton of movies. Like, this is a guy who's been busy working since like the 70s. He worked with Baz Luhrmann before on Romeo plus Juliet, and then this one, and then it looks like didn't work with him again. Some random things he's done is the Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, X-Men Origins Wolverine, Ender's Game, Mrs. Doubtfire. So it's like, I can't really get a good read on this guy and what his style is. None of these movies, I would say, are famous for their cinematography.
Yeah, this guy has one cinematography Oscar nomination ever, and that was Moulin Rouge. It's like, this guy made like one good movie.
Maybe his style is do as the director tells you.
Yeah, he's a studio hire for sure.
Yeah.
The guy who wrote this with Baz Luhrmann seems to pretty much just be Baz Luhrmann's writing partner. I don't see a lot on this guy's filmography that indicates he's done a lot of other stuff. And then the editor, Jill Bilcock, she's edited a ton of stuff as well, and these are all movies I've never heard of. It looks like maybe these are all Australian films that most of them did not have the crossover appeal. Yeah, this is an Australian lady who was the editor. Yeah, a lot to talk about with The Craft, and I guess it is very divisive all around. But let's just talk about the acting now. I mean, they got a pretty stacked cast here. Nicole Kidman, this is like maybe the height of her career.
Yeah, early 2000 Nicole Kidman. They got LeBron James in this movie.
Yeah. Ewan McGregor, right in the middle of his Star Wars run.
Yep.
They actually filmed it
huge.
in the same studio where they were doing Star Wars Episode 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about. I was like, they were probably filming the Star Wars movies like around the same time.
Yeah, I was surprised by that because in Star Wars Episode 2, his hair is longer.
Wow, that's crazy. How do they do that? Movie magic.
It's crazy. John Leguizamo's in this. He's really good. Jim Broadbent. Yeah, it's just like a cool kind of eclectic cast that you have here. And they're all, at the very least, you can tell they're having fun. But also, like, I'm reading about some of the casting decisions that were made. And a lot of, like, A-listers went out for this part as if it was the role of a lifetime, which I guess it was.
I got Leo DiCaprio trying and failing to be cast as Christian after, like, obviously, like, oh yeah, come back because you were in Romeo plus Juliet. But no, alas not. Same with Ethan Hawke and Courtney Love also auditioned to be Satine, but then she didn't get it, but she still gave her blessing to have Smells Like Teen Spirit in this film.
Yeah, so a very good cast that we ended up with.
Though this movie takes place in Paris, and they have like a collection of like European actors, and then they have Nicole Kidman, who I think she's doing an American accent, right?
No, she's doing a British accent, and she's
not doing her Australian accent.
No.
Which is, do Australians find that frustrating that you have an Australian director with Nicole Kidman and she's not allowed to do her Australian accent? I don't know if I've seen a movie with her in her Australian accent.
She's like a movie called Australia.
You'll have to go way back for that. No, because she plays a British woman in Australia.
What? Why?
Wait, it's her. That's her and Hugh Jackman, right? Does Hugh Jackman do a British accent too?
No, Hugh Jackman is like doing his roughed up Australian accent. Even though he's like literally the first thing from a rough, tough Australian.
No, he's musical theater Australian. But yeah, what do you think of Ewan McGregor as this like romance, like heartthrob character? It seems like kind of like a little bit of a miscast to me.
No,
he seems fine.
So. I think he should sing more. But
that was gonna be my other question. Are they actually singing, or is that somebody else doing their voices?
They're singing.
No, they're singing. Ewan McGregor should sing more. I don't know. I think he's got those big baby blue eyes. I think that he is really good at being like, because I guess, yes, people know him as Obi-Wan Kenobi, but even then, him and the Star Wars prequels does have a very period piece romantic interest about him. So I don't know. I think it works. I think, yeah, sure, as little as you saw him in the film, he probably does work better as that, like, depressed, alcoholic writer, but I think it works. I think he does really well as Christian. In the musical, they changed it to an American, and it is so weird having an Australian do an American accent in, like, an Australian... It's a lot. There are a lot of layers to this. Like, there suddenly becomes a lot of layers to this.
Yeah, I thought he was good. I thought that Nicole Kidman was good. And they're really the only two that matter. John Leguizamo is, I guess, like the third most important.
Yeah, John Leguizamo is playing a caricature, which is, what he's best at.
Yeah, so I think they nail it.
John Leguizamo is the only one in the film who's playing like an actual real life person.
Isn't Chocolate a real person?
Yeah, Le Chocolat. That is someone who has a blue link on their Wikipedia because they were a clown. They were one of the first black clowns.
Yeah, that's why Baz Luhrmann could be like, it's not racist. He was a real person.
He put one black guy in the movie, and it was a real guy, so he's not racist. No, I thought this cast was solid. The performances were good. I think, like, the main thing is, like, you hear Ewan McGregor sing for a second, and you're like, oh, I didn't know this guy could sing. And that's, like, that gets you most of the way there if you're watching a musical, is if you get to be surprised that an actor is able to sing. So, yeah, what are we thinking? Is this getting the full star for craft and performances?
I think so.
I I think so too. I think you guys might have been able to argue into a half star if you went like full nostalgia critic route of like, guys, it's so crazy, I can't make sense of this. But like, I feel like if the cinematography and editing is really like the only, I don't know if I can get into this part of it, and everything else works. I think the only performance that might not, I don't know, like here's the thing, Richard Ruxburgh, he put his whole heart, his full camp capacity into the character of the Duke.
Yeah, he's completely unforgettable. Completely forgettable. I'm sorry. Like, if they had like an actor that like, I don't know, had like a little bit more charisma to him, like I think you would have like bought the love triangle more.
I think this is definitely something that the musical like fixes in a sense, where the Duke is like something more of like a Byronic BDSM kind of sugar daddy guy, and I'm like, you know what? All right. Fair enough. But, you know, your mileage may vary on that plot interpretation, I guess.
You know who I was thinking of would be the perfect actor for the Duke? And I was thinking, because, like, similar movie around this time was when Kenneth Branagh played Gilderoy Lockhart in the second Harry Potter film. Like, that's the Duke right there. That would have been perfect. And Kenneth
like
Branagh is another guy that, like, yeah, he loves that, like, you know, going, like, full Shakespeare with it.
He's a theater guy.
Yeah.
I wonder if him and Baz Luhrmann are friends. I bet they're enemies.
They're mortal enemies.
Yeah.
There could only be one. It's the Highlander, but for
movie theater
Really
guys. Yeah,
really
exactly. Camp theater movie directors. We're going to move on. So that was segment 2. We're giving it the full star. So right now we're at 2 stars out of a potential 5 stars.
Yep.
But before we get into the next potential star rating, we're going to play Guess the Movie from this Letterboxd review.
Oh, boy.
So I'm going to read a couple of Letterboxd reviews, and you have to guess the movie. I have 3 reviews for each movie, and you just let me know what you think the movie is. We're going to do 3 different movies. These are all musical films.
Okay.
Or movie musicals.
You're going to have to carry this one. This is not my area of expertise.
For the most part, these are going to be original movie musicals too, so not based off of Broadway shows.
Okay.
All right, so here's your first review. This is from Beck. They gave this movie 5 stars, and they said, can someone make sure Wes Anderson is still breathing after the color scheme in this movie? Can someone make sure Wes Anderson is still breathing after the color scheme in this movie?
Is this Fantastic Mr. Fox?
Nope, that's not a musical.
Not a musical. Is it La La Land?
It's not La La Land. That's going to lead me into the next review. This review is from... What do you think it is?
Is it Umbrellas of Cherbourg?
No, it's not that.
Deep
All
cut.
right. So this next review is from Cherie, and the review just says, it's all caps. It says, La La Land who? Question mark. So kind of dissing La La Land in favor of this film.
So it would have been something recent, if I had to guess. What's a recent musical?
Or they just watched it more recently.
Yeah, it could be.
That definitely sounds like Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
All right, so we know it's got a Wes Andersonian color scheme, and someone dissed La La Land in favor of this movie. It's not the thing you just said. I don't know what that is. I'm just gonna go to the third review, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so this is from Demi. They didn't give this a star rating, but they gave it a heart. And it says, this movie is like a shockingly few short changes away from either being Dirty Dancing or a musical about class/race privilege and solidarity. Amazing what a slight TV movie budget increase can do. Even when it's all going to proper dance rehearsals and Lucas Grabiel's hat budget. Troy Bolton's dad brings a bowl full of grilled steaks up to his room at night.
I got nothing on these names, so...
Is it High School
Nothing
Musical?
for me.
The answer is High School Musical 2.
Oh, High School Musical 2. No, because the song. Yeah, about Troy and Gabriella break up.
Yep, so you guys didn't get that one.
The thing is about
Good try, though.
Cherbourg is like it has the Wes Andersonian color scheme. It has the almost, you know, it could have been us sort of relationship story.
I guess. I don't know. I don't know what that movie is. So I'm picking these movies.
The Umbrellas of Cherbourg is a 1964 musical romance film.
These are generally movies I think Dylan has a chance at getting.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll move on to the second
You
film.
assume too much of us in our movie knowledge.
All right.
I'm too busy for y'all.
This review is from Mia. She gave this 3.5 stars, and it says, people who can't enjoy this movie are boring and pretentious. I didn't make the rules. So very vague review there, but that's just the first one.
Is this one La La Land?
No, it's not La La Land.
Is it Mamma
I don't like
Mia?
La La Land,
Keep
so-
guessing La La Land, you might get it. It's not
it
Mamma
Mamma
Mia,
Mia?
but that's a good guess.
Is it Mamma Mia?
All right.
Here we go again.
It's not Mamma Mia. It's neither Mamma Mia film.
Wow.
The next review, they gave this 3 stars from Robin, and the review says, the Sacapellas are so valid.
Is this Pitch Perfect?
It is Pitch Perfect.
Let's go!
Good job.
Let's go!
Boom! I've seen musicals. I actually have seen Pitch Perfect.
All right, and the last review of Pitch Perfect says, I miss when life was simple, and my only problem was that I couldn't do the Cup song. That was from Sky, who gave this 5 stars.
The Cup song took
Love that
over the
movie.
goddamn world.
The Cup song is really easy to do. Like,
It
I
is
mean,
really
you just
easy.
gotta like practice it for like 5 minutes. And
Yep.
It's an easy
You
beat.
assume too much
All
of my
right,
hand.
last movie. Can you not do it? Me and Dylan do it all the time. All right, last film. This review is from David. He gave this 3 stars, and he said, the worst movie I ever liked. The worst movie I ever liked.
High praise.
God, that could be a lot. Is it Repro the Genetic Opera? Is it...
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Nope. All right, we'll move on to the second review. This person gave it 2.5 stars and said, I watched this movie while drinking heavily, and by the end, it beat me into submission, and I cheered when Zac Efron put on a hat.
Is it High School
Is this The
Musical
Lion
again?
King? No.
Is it High School Musical
No,
again?
it's not High School Musical. All right, I'm going to move on to the last review. This review, this is from Caro. They gave it 3.5 stars, and this review just says, The Prestige's Gay Cousin.
This is The Greatest Showman.
It is The Greatest Showman.
God,
Good job.
listen.
Shout out to Hugh Jackman, Australia's own.
If The Greatest Showman has no haters, I'm dead. If The Greatest Showman has one hater, it's me.
Yeah.
I could go on all day about my
Another movie with a lot of Oscars buzz on that one. Who did that movie?
I don't
It
know.
was like Pasek and Paul doing the music, and I could give a shit about the director because genuinely, P.T. Barnum is burning in hell right now.
The Greatest Showman is directed by a man named Michael Gracie, who is Australian.
Wow.
What is with the Australia?
Wow.
God damn it!
Well, he's probably friends with Hugh Jackman. That's probably how he got the job.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably, played golf in the mornings Peninsula and at the Ninch and went to Nida together or some bullshit like that.
Oh no, this Michael Gracie guy, he has like Tim Pool syndrome. He's always wearing a beanie in all of his photos. It's unfortunate.
Wow, that's a huge beanie, too.
Yeah, you think he's like one of those like white guys with dreads or something like that?
You think he's hiding the dreads? I think
Yeah.
if you are that guy, you don't hide the dreads.
Or he's like
the
the
premier.
villain from the Captain America movie. What's the guy's name? The guy with the big head,
The leader?
the leader.
Yeah.
Damn.
The thing is, like,
Yeah.
the premier white
Cast him
guy
in a
with
Marvel
dreads
movie.
in Australia is Tim Minchin. He's dropped the dreads, but he used to be Tim Minchin. And Tim Minchin can make a musical of goddamn quality. So,
Yeah, we'll have to talk about him on this podcast at
Yeah,
some point.
Michael Gracie also directed the Better Man film, the Monkey movie last
I
year.
do want to see that.
Yeah, another musical.
and it's
All right,
actually written by Simon Gleeson, who has done a lot of theatre stuff here in Australia, which is something that I learned really recently. And I'm like, Simon Gleeson, wait, didn't he play Raoul in the Australian production of Love Never Dies? I don't know how I know that.
Huh. Okay, that's going to bring it to our next segment. This is the critics' consensus. So whether or not critics like this movie will determine how much of a star this segment gets. So just for context, this movie got a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes on the tomato meter, which means that 3/4 of critics who saw this movie liked it. And then it has a 66 on Metacritic, which is a little lower than I expected. On Letterboxd, it has a 3.8 out of 5.
So I say with musicals, the same as horror films, you are sort of grading on a curve because musicals are sort of the hardest films to go for bat for, and a lot of movie critics are just not going to like musicals going in. So I think even as a musical, like that's not, I don't know, something like Wicked or something that's considered kind of a goat, that's relatively high.
I guess that's true. I guess I haven't looked at other musical movie scores to compare it to. So that probably is true. At the time, Roger Ebert gave this 3.5 out of 4 stars, which is pretty high for him. He said the movie is all color and music, sound and motion, kinetic energy, broad strokes, and operatic excess. And then counterpoint, the New York Times wrote that the film is undeniably rousing, but there is not a single moment of organic excitement because Mr. Luhrmann is so busy splicing bits from other films. So kind of a mixed bag in terms of initial reviews. But then you look at all the awards buzz this movie got, and it got a lot of buzz. It was nominated for Best Picture and picked up like at least 6 other Academy Award.
It was nominated for Best
nominations.
Picture back when it was only 5 movies that got nominated that year. It's not like now where like any like decent movie that's getting some buzz is getting nominated for Best Picture.
And there are things that even aren't decent, like Emilia Perez.
Sure.
And yeah, so it got nominated for Best Picture, Best Actress, Art Direction. It won for Art Direction and Costume Design. It was also nominated for Cinematography, Film Editing, Makeup, and Sound. So like a lot of technical awards, which makes sense for like I said, a movie that's like this colorful, has this much like going on. It is interesting that it was like a little divisive with the critics, because I would say that like, listen, a movie's good, like everybody's gonna like it, and it's clear that this is a film that has like, it sits in that niche of like people that like this type of movie, like this movie, and that people that are not in that circle probably look at this movie and they're like a little confused. Which probably explains like my viewing experience watching this movie, where I go, I bet musical theater people like this movie. I don't know if it crosses that Rubicon to like, you know, normies enjoying it. And that's probably where it sits with like a lot of critics.
Oh yeah, it's also very much when internet movie criticism became really big. You know, your nostalgia critics and your cinema sins, this film was very easy to make fun of because it was so like emotionally overwrought and campy. So obviously, you know, what Doug, the nostalgia critic Walker himself, called his like magnum opus review was his review of Moulin Rouge, and you had the guilty pleasure song, and he basically just said, oh, this film is just a guilty pleasure except the Tango de Roxanne scene, which, yes, I agree is the best scene of the film, but also you can't call a film that's so deeply celebrated and a film with such incredible production design just a guilty pleasure. It feels so mean now, the disrespect on Baz Luhrmann's name. So obviously that tainted a lot of, like, back when everyone thought it was very cool and very smart to be cynical about movies, that Moulin Rouge is one of the films that really caught a lot of heat, which I guess tainted the internet's perspective of it, which we are now just coming out of, in the sense of like, let things be happy and let people enjoy things. So this film does have a history in that regard, definitely.
Yeah, it's tough to say, but I think just like the number of Academy Awards it was nominated for, and when I'm doing like research and stuff, you know, I didn't sit through an entire Nostalgia Critic video to research this episode. You know, I don't always go and
I would not be,
yeah,
unfortunately, I would not be here were it not for the Nostalgia Critic, like here doing this podcast,
okay.
Were it not for pre-2017, the Nostalgia Critic.
I watched a lot of his content when I was, not a lot, but some of his content when I was a kid, and the Nostalgia Chick as well, and Linkara for the Power Ranger stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know what the video essayist take on this film is. I really only know like what is under the release and reception section of the Wikipedia page. And
it got nominated for a shitload of Oscars. I think this is like a pretty easy star to assign for this, regardless of if the critics' consensus is not like super high.
Being nominated is one thing. They just won. They definitely won the ones that they absolutely deserve to win, and considering that they were in all these like production design elements, they were running against Lord of the Rings, and you can still say that it's not a snub because Moulin Rouge looks, like I said, from the production design element, from like it looks fantastic. Everything on the screen is so masterfully crafted, and a lot of it's very practically crafted as well. So if you're running against Fellowship and you manage to win anyway without people being that pissed off, unless they're like a Die Hard or the Rings fan, I'd say that's a star.
All right, so pretty easy star for that
Yeah,
one.
both of its Oscars, it beat Fellowship and Sorcerer's Stone for the category.
Suck
interesting.
in, J.K. Rowling.
All right, the next star we have is the audience reception. So this is where we see whether or not this was successful with the general movie-going audience. So like I said, this has a 3.8 on Letterboxd, which is quite high, usually indicative of like a cult classic at that rating. And then it made $179.2 million off a $50 million budget. And I've read that it had what is considered to be really successful DVD sales. So not only did it triple and more its budget, but then it made a lot on DVDs as well. So financially, big success, this movie.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, it revitalized. You can't revitalize a genre with one movie alone if it's not going to be like wildly successful, because that's the only, like, that's what the studios listen to is, you know, box office and sales and how much money this, like, how profitable this is. So yeah, it proved itself incredibly goddamn profitable, and without it we wouldn't have had a lot of other movies that also proved themselves profitable, and films that also didn't prove themselves particularly profitable but are still beloved, and ones that just aren't.
Yeah, it's interesting that this movie didn't get any sort of like sequel or like spinoff or anything like that.
I think it's because
unless it did, I'm not aware of any.
He hasn't
it's not really
status
like
too
that.
much. Yeah, you don't get a sequel to like a Wes Anderson movie. It's that same thing where like
exactly.
Baz Luhrmann's an auteur, he makes the projects he wants to make. I think there's like a further story maybe to be told with Christian, you know, if you want it, if you like want it. But I feel like he got it, you know, he wanted his taste in Moulin Rouge again, so he made the stage musical.
Yeah, I think like the sequel to this is that he came over here and made The Great Gatsby. Like that's basically the same thing as being allowed to make a sequel to this. Is he just got to
I think
do
like
whatever
if
he
you guys
wanted
have,
for
like,
the next
Australia
couple years.
was right in the middle of Great Gatsby and Moulin Rouge, and everyone forgot the film existed, including Australians. We don't like that film a whole
Yeah, I
lot
don't.
here.
I've never seen that movie. I've definitely not seen that film, but like you can see the like connective tissue between this film and Gatsby. All of that excessiveness is still there. Gatsby very much feels like a musical, even though it's not. So it definitely was successful enough that this guy still basically had blank checks for at least the next two projects. I don't know about after Gatsby. I'm not sure how successful that was. But then he did a Netflix series and then Elvis. So he's still been keeping busy, but not at the same rate as like Nolan.
He very much still has blank checks from the Australian government. Like, he's still, at least even just the Victoria State government. Like, I've discussed this a couple times in some old articles I wrote, but like the Australian new wave of cinema was very much like a government-funded new wave. And we still have things like Screen Australia. So I feel like Baz Luhrmann, if he doesn't get blank checks from Hollywood, he's going to get blank checks from Screen Australia basically for the rest of his life on account of being Baz Luhrmann.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's your guy. And good for him. So yeah, audiences generally like this. Like the people who are reviewing it and rating it are generally musical theater fans, I would guess. So I'm not sure like how this holds up when you just go and randomly show this to a person. Like I'll look at my friends list here. Shane, who's been on this podcast, gave this movie 4 stars. Dylan, you're the lowest on my friends list with 2 stars. Emma, who's been on this podcast on the Mummy episode, gave this 4.5 stars. Just looking at the people who have been on here, Madeline, who's been on the pod, gave this 5 stars.
Yeah, it's tricky because like like you said, this is a genre of film where like, you know, how many people are watching this that are not generally into, you know, musicals or musical theater? Like I would be in like the minority of like, I host a podcast, you know, I have to watch this movie for the podcast. This is not a movie that I would otherwise like seek out. So, you know, when you're looking at those audience reviews, it's the audience reviews of people that wanted to go see this movie. And I think it's a film that it works for its intended audience.
That's why I sort of said the
but based
professional
off the
critics grade on a curve. Like, that's sort of what I mean of like, yeah, if you're really not into camp or musicals or really emotionally overwrought stories or romanticism or operatic tropes, you're not going to have a good time with this film. You're going to think the story is stupid and you're going to want to poke holes in it. You're going to think the cinematography is crazy. Like, but if you're into it, you're in, man. You're going to be absolutely crazy about it, which I am.
Yeah, I think it's one of these movies that you have to like kind of buy into right at the jump, because Dylan and I, when we were watching it, we got confused immediately, and it's kind of hard to come back from that. And I've seen this before.
I know. I was turning to you for help, and you're like, I don't know, man. I'm sorry.
Bro, I didn't get it the first time. But, like, John was right. Our roommate was watching it with us as well, and he was like, it's just a love story about these two people. Don't worry about the rest of it. And I guess that is how you have to look at this. But, yeah, okay. So, audiences, 3.8 on Letterboxd, which is over half, and then pretty massively successful financially. Do we want to give this the full star as well?
I think just for, like, because it sort of bleeds into the influence, I think it does get the full star. I think there's going to be, if I can predict what the next star is going to be, which is story, I think this is going to be the last full star it's going to get.
No, we don't have story as a star currently. We might do that in the future.
Yeah, maybe we'll add that. We'll definitely talk about the story at some point in this pod. It's coming.
It's coming. All right, so this is getting another full star. So that means we're currently at 4 stars out of a potential 5 stars. It's gotten all 4 stars we've talked about so far. The last star for our objective rating is just whether or not we feel like giving it another star. So based on me and Dylan watching it,
the host
and you watching it. So we can do, this time we'll do, me and Dylan can determine amongst ourselves whether to give it a half star or not. And you can give it a half star if you think it deserves a full star. So between the 3 of us, we've got 1 star to work with.
So this film is so full
I wonder.
effort. Here it is. So this film is so full effort as far as, yeah, basically every element of, like, it's clear that this is a movie that Baz really wanted to make. He had all these influences narratively. I mean, like, wasn't inspired directly off La Traviata, but the story is very La Traviata. He was inspired by his work on La Boheme. He was inspired by Orpheus and Eurydice. He was, it's clear that this is a story he really wanted to tell, and it was something that means a lot to him, and that definitely shows on screen. The story, listen, if you can suspend your disbelief for it in the same way you can for, like, any romantic film, especially one that's like, yeah, this is like a very romanticism film, and if you're not into, like, romanticism, and if you're very sensible about your plots and you want everything to, like, make sense and have cohesion and everyone to act like a sensible grown-up, then you might not have fun with this film, because it is very melodramatic and everyone's following their goddamn heart in this film. And yeah, they do improve that in stage musical. They at least allow conversations and conflicts to happen and for all the characters to feel a little more complete beyond their tropes. But as a send-up to the same operatic tropes that made La Boheme and La Traviata such a hit, and as a send-up to, like, camp and melodrama, which is this film sort of is, I think it does great. I think this is such a beautiful, like, send-up to the reason why, yeah, people want to fill the world with silly love songs. I think this is the greatest watch if this is the best Valentine's Day watch as well. I'll give it the full star, because I know that mine only counts a half, and a half star is kind of all I'd be willing to give it, because it's not a perfect film. And I think as much as I obsess about Moulin Rouge, I know in my heart of hearts it's not a perfect film. The villain, the antagonist, is incredibly underwritten. Basically everyone outside of Satine and Christian, completely underdeveloped minor characters. Which granted, yeah, the fact is that the stage musical improved on a lot plot-wise, because they rewrote a lot plot-wise, which obviously means that the plot and the writing and the plot aren't exactly. But granted, if you're watching a film just to pull apart the plot, then you're no goddamn fun. You're no fun, and this film is for fun people, I'm afraid. And it is camp. And as Lexi once told me, camp, Rhianna. You like camp. So I'll give it the full star.
Cool. Dylan, what do you think?
I think what we can do here is me and Jason give 0 stars so that we can go half star in the aggregate.
Yes.
So that this can finish at 4.5 stars and not 5 stars. Because
you think it deserves
this
the
movie
5 stars?
If this movie goes to 5 stars, it's going to make half of the overrated, underrated argument a lot more difficult than 4.5 stars.
So yeah, me and Dylan are not giving this our star, but it's getting a half star from you. So that brings us to our quote unquote objective score out of 5, and this movie, Moulin Rouge, got a 4.5 out of 5 stars on our scale. So with a score of 4.5, now we pick sides and argue whether this is overrated or underrated based on that 4.5 rating. So at 4.5 stars, Ree, do you think this movie is overrated or underrated?
I mean, listen, we are still, as like an internet movie culture, we are still sort of crawling out of the isn't it cool to hate things era of film criticism. And in that sense, it's definitely underrated. I think it sits in the same sort of vein as like that one Pitch Perfect review. If you don't like this, you are like, if you hate on this, you're boring and pretentious. Sorry, I don't make the rules. Because the thing is like people will like scramble and try and make arguments as to why this movie sucks and why it's so stupid and the plot makes no sense and oh, it's so lovey-dovey and it's for chicks and it's so gay. Which is essentially, that is essentially when you boil it down through all the little smart ass comments, that is essentially what they are saying. So in that sense of like, oh, every film has to have a really deep plot and the writing has to be, in that sense it's underrated in like the internet movie sphere. But it is pretty goddamn rated as far as like the objective, like this is what it did for film cult, like this is what it did for film history, and this is, the amount of accolades it got. I think it definitely deserved all it got at the time. I just wish that retroactively it still got its flowers, because I think it still should be considered one of the best movie musicals of the 21st century, despite the fact that like so many good ones, like so many incredible ones like Hairspray and Chicago and stuff came out after it. You got to give love to what started it all in the 21st century, and in that sense, it doesn't get enough love these days, I don't think. Maybe now that people are realizing that all the arguments were made by now people are realizing what a bad faith argument is. Moulin Rouge is getting its flowers again. I think it should get some more.
All right, so an underrated rating from Ree. Dylan, what do you think?
I think this is tricky because it's like, what pantheon do we try to like group this in with? Do we compare this to other movie musicals in general, or do we specifically compare it to, original musicals that are not based off of, stage plays? Because obviously that's going to like narrow down the competition a lot more when you're, comparing it only against, films that, musicals that were films first. And then, it was later brought to Broadway, because when you're looking at like the greatest musicals of all time, a lot of the times, they're based off of, a stage performance. And however, like when it comes to like writ large, if we're using the 4.5 out of 5, I think this movie is probably a little bit overrated. It's a movie that I had never seen. It's not a movie that has like a lot of lasting legacy. I think like, overall with like, movies, I think that this is a film that really sits well in the time that it came out. It was clearly very popular in the early 2000s. However, the movie that I compare it to is a film that we were talking about right after we watched it, Jason, was where is it? Because we were looking at the other films that were nominated for Best Picture that year. There's another film that was nominated called Gosford Park, which is a murder mystery set in Great Britain. It's got a bunch of really like now well-known like British actors. It's made by the guy that did Downton Abbey. It's a movie that I had never heard of. Like, it's completely off my radar. It's a film that clearly got a lot of Oscars buzz in the early 2000s. It was a film that people liked a lot. I'm sure the people that like murder mysteries and people that like British films really probably go to bat for Gosford Park. And that's kind of like the same realm that I see Moulin Rouge in. It's a film that people like that like this type of movie. And I think for a movie to be truly great, it needs to transcend its direct audience. And I don't think that Moulin Rouge is a film that, I mean, frankly, I don't think it's trying to attract audience outside of like, people that like high energy, frenetic musical theater. However, at the rating scale that we're talking about here for our overrated, underrated arguments, that's where it's got to hit. And in my opinion, I mean, I don't even think it frankly comes close. I mean, we haven't talked about the story at all here. It's a movie where a man is introduced, and then we see a female character, and then the movie tells us they're in love. And they're in love, and then that's the rest of the movie. It tries to like backdoor like a love triangle into it that is not even remotely convincing. It's got a whole cast of characters that I could give a shit about. It's kind of goofy. And the movie is like, you know, I need a little bit of plot. I think that's like the bare minimum I need. We sat here and we talked about The Notebook, you know, a year and a half ago. I love stories, okay? I love it when we see two characters that are coming from different backgrounds and, you know, they just fall for each other. And in this, Nicole Kidman, like, you know, it's like a mistake that she runs into Ewan McGregor. They like trick her into like, you know, trying to hook up with him in The Elephant.
Well,
and then he sings her a song. I don't know what song it is.
It's an Elton John song.
He sings her a song and they're in love. And that's the movie. And there's she also has tuberculosis. We haven't talked about tuberculosis once in this podcast. Why does she have tuberculosis?
It's because it's an operatic trope. It happens in La Traviata. It happens in Moulin Rouge. You got to have the pretty lady with the most. Before it became like a series, like, you know, back in the 1800s where we didn't know how illnesses worked, before it became like John Green's.
Everybody has tuberculosis.
Everyone has got tuberculosis specifically because it was like, oh god, it's blood. Oh, I'm so pale and I'm fainting all the time. You know, before it, oh, this is a serious disease that's still, you know. So listen, in supporting your argument, undeniably, there are better musicals out there. If we're talking the widespread of you know, musical theater, if we're talking about even just original musicals, this is one that I did in my it's a Jackal moment. Umbrella's a Cherbourg, undeniably is a love story and is a stylish musical. It is better than Moulin Rouge because it's better than La La Land as well. So there are better musicals out there. There are musicals with there's better like songs, original songs, you know, rather than like, listen, the use of the jukebox musical works so well, and the songs they chose are great, and the performance is great. Tango de Roxanne is still one of the best dance scenes or singular scenes in movie musicals. The tango scene is great.
Mm-hmm.
But undeniably, there are better, more masterfully done musicals out there. So yeah, as far as like, yeah, in the sense Moulin Rouge isn't as good as I'm like propping it up to be for the sake of argument. So yeah, you are correct. It is, yeah, there are definitely better ones out there, but it doesn't mean Moulin Rouge is any less good.
My overall thoughts on this are like, this is not one of my favorite movie musicals. Although I will say, I do think it's better than like a lot of the crop of like any live action thing that Disney's put out,
But
remake
then again,
or
what
otherwise.
isn't?
Yeah, but I would even say this is better than like Into the Woods, which is not a remake, it's an adaptation. There's a lot going for this that makes it stand out. I think that Baz Luhrmann does have a very specific style that, you know, it makes his works look and feel distinct and memorable, honestly. But overall, like, this is not a movie that I feel compelled to watch and watch again. I am curious, obviously, to see the Broadway version of this and to see if I would like that more, because I bet I would. This seems like something that to experience it live. Yeah, I think it might be touring around here right now, actually. So maybe I should do that. It's fun. I think in terms of musical mashups, I think they really nailed down that formula in Glee a couple years after this. I don't think every song on the soundtrack here really lends itself to the story, but that's another reason why I'm curious to see the live show where they use more songs that I have heard of. I recently saw Anne Juliet on Broadway, which is also a jukebox musical that uses modern songs in an old-timey setting. And that one I had more fun with than this one. So I'm going to say this is a little bit overrated at a 4.5 stars. All right. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the more extreme argument that I can make is that this is a movie that is like really, really, really propped up by Nicole Kidman's performance specifically. I think like if you take Nicole Kidman out of this movie, it's like it might be a bad movie. Yeah, I think like the entire vibe of the film shifts when she shows up. Like she's so magnetic, and like it's a scene where like literally everybody in the room is looking at her, and it's like a metaphor for the entire movie. without her specifically in that role, I think it'd just be like a fine sort of like romance musical, and she's like really, really elevating, the movie overall. We have to talk about the Star Wars connection to this movie. I brought it up when we were watching it, Jason. Rhea, I don't know how much of a Star Wars fan you are.
Oh, I know exactly what you're about to bring up. The way that Ewan McGregor is falling in love with a Satine who ends up dying.
Yeah. Her name is Satine, and there is a Star Wars character named Satine in the Clone Wars animated series who just so happens to be the character that Obi-Wan Kenobi falls in love with in the source material. Like, I was looking up, I think it's Dan Gilroy. The guys that wrote the Clone Wars series, they were like adamant that they did not name Satine, who is the Queen of Mandalore, who Obi-Wan Kenobi falls in love with. Stop laughing, Jason. Okay, you're into this nerdy shit. Okay.
Not me.
You and your Marvel T-shirt. It's just a weird coincidence, if it is a coincidence, because Satine is not a common name. And the fact that
cast Nicole Kidman, fan cast Nicole Kidman, specifically in her role in His Dark Materials as Satine for this reason, and also just because honestly, her role in Miss Coulter in His Dark Materials can very much like, oh yeah, okay, I buy it. But also, because I think it'd be very funny. So, and as I said, the second Star Wars film was made in the exact same soundstage. They used the same goddamn. I think they used the one next door. Maybe, I don't know. Ewan McGregor got out of costume and then was like, okay, I've got to go. I've got to do Moulin Rouge now. Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, he was shooting them back to back, so that must have been interesting for him. I mean, what a run to go from Star Wars Episode 1 to this, to Star Wars Episode 2. That guy was eating good at the time.
Would this movie have been better with Leonardo DiCaprio as the role in the role of Christian? Obviously, Leo's a bigger actor now. This early 2000s run is probably the peak of Ewan McGregor's career. He didn't get more famous after this.
No, I don't know. I thought he was good. I don't know if Leo would have made this particularly better.
I mean, is it better that Christian is played by an actor that like doesn't overshadow Satine at all? That he's just probably like a normie looking dude? Yeah,
I think you're right. And Leo kind of got to do, play that poor boy falling in love with like,
a redhead,
fancy, prettier woman. When he was doing the Titanic.
Film.
So,
and he already got his little turn doing a Baz Luhrmann film, and then he did it again. He played Jay Gatsby. So I don't think Leo would have needed this.
That's right. That's right.
In the sense that, can he sing? I don't know.
Were Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise married when this movie came out? Was that around that time?
Let me look.
Tom Cruise would have been interesting in this, huh?
Yeah, I don't know if he can sing.
Where's the Moulin Rouge Mission Impossible crossover?
They broke up in 2001.
2001. Oh man.
Yeah, so it would have been probably right during filming.
Tom Cruise is the Duke. That's inspired.
Yeah, I've read somewhere in my research that there was rumors of an affair between Ewan McGregor and Nicole Kidman, but they both denied the affair. So, but who knows?
Listen, Ewan McGregor.
Either of them.
Ewan McGregor's cool with breaking up marriages. I'll just say that.
Yeah. We don't need to talk too much about that, but yeah, he's done it since this one at least. All right, any final thoughts on Moulin Rouge?
Not the same thing as Saw, where it's like go see it. If you're not into musicals and if you're not into camp and if you're not into like high melodrama romanticism, you're not gonna have a good time. And if you are into all these things already, chances are you've seen it. I think it's not like think of like go see this. I just think more respect needs to be put on Moulin Rouge, even if it is as we sort of said, a little overrated. And there are absolutely better films out there, both before and after, and even during. But I think it might be at least in the sense of like movie internet culture or nerd culture. I think it's maybe a little overhated. And Baz Luhrmann and Nicole Kidman are two of our most precious goddamn commodities here in Australia. More than Hugh Jackman, 10 times more. So anything that they're involved in is just going to be no, not anything. Like I said, it's hard. It's hard. It's not. I'm not as obsessed with this film as I am with Saw, but I still think it's a movie that's worth your time if you're into that sort of thing. which I am.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Dylan, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. If you like musicals, you probably like this movie. If you don't like musicals, you're gonna not like this movie at all. And that's kind of like the end of it. The whole like jukebox musical thing is like kind of interesting. And I wonder what like a Moulin Rouge that came out like in 2025 would look like. Like what if they're pulling songs from like the 2000s and the 2010s. Yeah. You know, yeah, like a modern version of it. You know, could that work? Probably.
Even if you don't like, here's the thing, even if you hate stage musicals, at least do yourself a favor and watch the Tango de Roxanne scene. If you take one thing from this movie, that one scene is all you need. It is one of the best singular scenes in movie musical history. It's so goddamn good. So even if you hate musicals and all sort of stuff, like that is the one part of like the nostalgic review is right. It's the best scene of the film. It's the best scene. It's the only scene of the film that works absolutely top to bottom and 10 out of 10.
Yeah. One time I was visiting a friend in college and she kept singing the Tango de Roxanne and I had no frame of reference for what the hell she was talking about. She was just singing Roxanne in a really gravelly Eastern European accent. And I was like, what? And then she got so drunk, she sat on the pizza we got from Domino's, and we still talk about that.
That's a party foul.
Whenever we see each other. So this movie has, I guess, a special place in my heart from just like fun times in college and like my first introduction to it just being like going to visit someone that I hadn't gotten to see since high school. So yeah, wow, remembering that makes me like this movie a good bit more. This movie is for drinking to and then singing along to with your friends. And that's probably the best way to watch it. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you for listening and watching, everyone. As always, please check us out on social media. We're on Twitter and Facebook and stuff. You can watch our episodes on YouTube, or you can just listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your pods. And then check us out on Patreon. You can subscribe to our Patreon on the free tier, where you don't even have to give us anything, but you'll still get a little bit of goodies, and you'll be supporting us just by being there for us. Check us out on Discord, where you can have fun conversations like this. Go ahead, Rhi.
Yeah, I'm not on Collider anymore, but I'm still on social media, I suppose. I'm sure we'll have, like, you know, my Insta and my TikTok and whatever the hell. Whenever I don't know, decide to actually start posting on anything, maybe I'll get a Substack. Who knows? It was so much fun working with you guys again. I hope you have me back on the podcast, because I just absolutely love yapping about movies with these dudes. They're pretty cool.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Rhi.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks again. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. We'll see you at the movies. Bye.
Bye!